Let's move over to this now. The sector's recovery and growth, as well as the emergence of trends like backyard travel, means domestic tourism in Southern Africa is expected to stabilize in 2023. Hotel occupancy and room rates will see an increase to pre-COVID levels, and that could be impacted by the rising cost of living. But communities with affordable lodging will become more popular with locals. To discuss this further, I'm joined by CEO of Bon Hotels, Guy Stehlik. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, Guy. And maybe just break down the trend that you are seeing when it comes to tourism in Southern Africa and the way in which is moving, just given the changing way in which we live, whether it's because of money or any other kind of resources that we're exposed to at the moment.
Right. Thank you for having me. Well, if we have to break up the tourism market between international and domestic, and if we break up domestic tourism between leisure and corporates and conferencing, the one thing that we're seeing is that domestic travel and domestic corporate business and conferencing are back in line with 2019. In fact, in many of our hotels, which are mid-market corporate hotels, we're up on 2019. And that can be attributed to a whole bunch of factors, mostly, the need for people to meet each other, the need for corporates to be met face to face, et cetera, et cetera. I think we all understand that. So on that side, we can definitely tick the box. However, on the international side, on the international inbound side, the trends are a lot more concerning. And apart from Cape Town, which is very quickly kind of recovering to 2018 levels, we're about 34% down on 2022 and not quite in line with 2019. But from an international point of view, there's some pretty worrying stats out there, which are attributed to macroeconomic factors, like the price of jet fuel, the war in the Ukraine. And then more concerning is the lack of activity from South African tourism, where we're losing some of our key source markets.
That is quite worrying because South Africa benefited quite a bit from the international market when it came to tourism. And we'll speak about that component in a bit, Guy. But what I find interesting is that tourism within South Africa that you're seeing locals do. And maybe just explain to us the different forms that local tourists are enjoying in different parts of the country. Because we've lamented for a while that the cost of traveling within the country is very expensive. With flight costs and the like. And so it's interesting to see that people are finding nice things to do within and around our borders. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we started seeing that. We started seeing a spike in domestic tourism about a year and a half ago. And a lot of that was what we would call that we'd attribute that really to the phenomenon called revenge tourism. But domestic tourism has always been strong in South Africa. We have so much to offer, and the only hindrance right now is the price of the flights, the price of the domestic flights, and a lot of that's got to do with the lift factors and the demise of Kulula.com and Mango, a couple of the other smaller airlines. And I think if those prices were to regulate and come down, we'd see an even bigger increase there. But we're seeing it mostly in the domestic corporate side, not necessarily in the domestic leisure travel. So corporates are traveling again, government is traveling, conferences are happening again in a big way.
And how important is 2023 going to be, Guy, when it comes to attracting the right kind of tourism to your establishments and to tourism in general in Southern Africa? How important are creating the right programs and initiatives going to be here?
Well, there's two sides. There's our internal, there's the collective marketing and sales efforts of South African tourism. And then there's really the collective activity of tourism bodies and the hotel groups and entities such as SATSA and everything. And, there we've got no problem with the marketing effort and the PR effort. But the problem is with South African tourism at this point in time. And, some of the messages that are being sent out there, like the one that came out today about the sponsorship of R1 billion with Tottenham Hotspurs. This is our money. This is our money that we collect on behalf of South African tourism, and we want it to be spent responsibly. And then, you also need to look at the own goals that government continues to score as far as electricity and water and the overall PR image. And, South Africa really needs to work. We need to work on our PR image overseas. And a lot of that is outside of our hands because of these factors. However, having said that, the international inbound business, we believe, is going to continue to be a little bit strained this year, not quite up to 2019 levels. And a lot of that's got to do with the war in the Ukraine and the price of flights. Even as a relatively cheap destination in South Africa, the exchange rate being positive, the price of the long-haul flights is still expensive by any means.
Expensive indeed. But what about the issue of safety as well? There have been a couple of stories that we've been exposed to. The German tourist who was murdered at Numbi Gate in Mpumalanga, and then, of course, Josine in KZN, where tourists bumped into poachers who were poaching and were shot at because they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. The levels of safety that are in South Africa at the moment, do you think that those perhaps are also going to be a bit of a deterrent that will prevent us from being back to the 2019 levels of international tourism?
Well, look, yes and no. I think we need to create some perspective on that. The crime and grime in South Africa has always been a bugbear for us. But, we don't think that that's going to deter international travel. What we are seeing, however, is the lack of groups. Group business, which has still got to return to, 2018 levels. We're not seeing those big groups coming, those groups of 60. We're seeing smaller groups. But going back to the question, it all adds up. And, the marketing message of South Africa from a safety and security perspective is not a great one. And, we've got a lot of work to do in that regard.
We do. Thank you very much for your time. That is the CEO of Bon Hotels, Guy Stehlik, joining us this afternoon to speak about tourism trends that are currently unfolding in the country and what can be expected in 2023.